So what in the world does a thousand-year-old fortress have in common with a nomadic horde?
I mean, on the surface, absolutely nothing, right? One is the ultimate symbol of defense, of staying put, and the other is a force of pure, unstoppable offense. But these two powers, in their own very different ways, literally tore down the old world to build a new one. You think these are two totally separate stories happening in opposite corners of the globe, but they're actually two sides of the very same coin. Both are just these incredible examples of how a single game-changing idea, whether that's a new piece of tech or a brilliant new strategy, can completely redraw the map. And here they are. On your left, you've got the ultimate symbol of defense, the legendary walls of Constantinople. For a millennium, they were the bastion of power. And on the right, well, that's what happens when you perfect the art of conquest, the Mongol Empire, the largest single land empire in all of human history. So, how did one fall and the other rise? Let's dive in. All right, first up, let's head over to the great city of Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire. For centuries, this wasn't just a city, it was the city. You know, a center of trade, culture, and serious power. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that. For 1,000 years, these walls turned away countless invaders. They were an absolute engineering marvel, a massive statement carved in stone that the empire inside was eternal, that it was completely unconquerable. But, nothing lasts forever. Long before that final siege, the empire was already being hollowed out. First from the inside, with things like the devastating plague of Justinian, which killed thousands a day at its peak. And then from the outside, the empire was in a state of near constant warfare, just fending off these relentless attacks from pretty much every direction. So you fast forward to the mid-1400s, and the once mighty empire is really just a shadow of its former self. It's basically just the city itself and a little bit of land around it. And at the same time, a new, ambitious power was rising in the east, the Ottoman Turks. And that brings us to this year, 1453. This is the year it all comes to a head. A young, brilliant Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed II, decided he wanted the ultimate prize. He brought a massive army to the gates of Constantinople, and he was determined to do what no one else had managed to do for 1,000 years. For a millennium, stone walls were the answer to every attack. Until this. Mehmed brought a totally new kind of weapon. Enormous cannons. We're talking monsters that could fire these massive stone balls and just pulverize the ancient fortifications. And just like that, the city's greatest strength became its fatal weakness. Technology had made the unbreachable walls, breachable. After a grueling 53-day siege, the city fell. And that was it. The Byzantine Empire was no more. Mehmed rode into his new capital, which he renamed Istanbul. The news sent absolute shockwaves across Europe, and for many, it marks the definitive end of the Middle Ages. A whole new era had begun. Okay, so that's one story. A game-changing piece of tech breaks down a wall and reshapes the world. Pretty incredible. But a couple of centuries before any of that, an even bigger disruption was happening all across Asia. And this one wasn't driven by new tech, but by a revolutionary new way of organizing people. So now, let's shift gears. We're leaving the stone fortresses of the Mediterranean behind, and we're heading east to the vast, windswept grasslands of the Eastern Steppe. For centuries, this was home to nomadic tribes, fierce warriors who were, honestly, usually fighting each other. So this is the world that the Mongols came from. For most of their history, they weren't this unified force at all. They were just a collection of loosely organized, competing clans. But around the year 1200, one man comes along and changes everything. That man's name was Temujin. Through sheer force of will, strategic genius, and just plain ruthlessness, he defeated his rivals one by one and united all the Mongol tribes under a single banner. He was given a new title, Genghis Khan. It means universal ruler, and believe me, he was about to live up to that name. So how on earth did he do it? What was the secret sauce? Well, it really boils down to three things. First, he was a brilliant organizer. He structured his army in this super simple but crazy effective decimal system. Second, he was a brilliant strategist, using tricks like feigned retreats and psychological warfare to outsmart his enemies. And third, he was incredibly cruel. He used terror as a weapon. If a city resisted, he would often just slaughter everyone, which, as you can imagine, convinced a lot of other cities to surrender without a fight. And let me tell you, this formula for conquest It worked. Oh boy, did it work. Genghis Khan and his successors unleashed a wave of conquests that the world had simply never seen before. Seriously, just take a second and look at this map. The sheer scale is mind-boggling. In just over 2 decades, Genghis Khan conquered most of Asia, and his sons and grandsons kept going, pushing west into Russia and the Middle East and south down into China. And the impact was just profound. I mean, in Russia, the Mongol Golden Horde ruled for 2 whole centuries. In the Middle East, they sacked the great city of Baghdad, a major center of learning and culture. And in China, Genghis's grandson, Kublai Khan, established a new dynasty, and this is surprising, he actually opened China up to foreign trade, famously hosting travelers like Marco Polo. All right, so we've got our 2 stories, the fortress that fell and the horde that rose. So now let's put them side by side and see how they both, in their own unique ways, completely redrew the map of the world. So, on the one hand, the fall of Constantinople kicks off this new era of warfare where technology, gunpowder, could beat ancient defenses. It totally shifted the balance of power in Europe and, like we said, is often seen as the bookend to the Middle Ages. Then, on the other hand, you've got the rise of the Mongol horde, which introduced a whole new scale of conquest, built on organization and strategy. It created new dynasties across Asia and, by controlling the Silk Road, connected east and west like never before. When you boil it all down, what you're really looking at are 2 different kinds of unstoppable forces. One was a technological revolution that shattered old ideas about power. The other was a strategic revolution that shattered old boundaries. Both were total world changers that helped pave the way for the modern age. And that kind of leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? History is just this long story of disruption, of old ways being swept away by new unstoppable forces. Back then, it was cannons and cavalry. The question for us is, what are the forces that are redrawing our map today?